literally half of the United States has already implemented age verification laws. That means 25 states, and that's not a prediction. That has already happened, with the newest state to join being Missouri, who's following a similar pattern where if a third of a site or platform's content is deemed, however they deem, harmful to minors, then they need to use age verification tools like digital IDs, government-issued IDs, or transactional data. These laws are so invasive that big tech companies like Apple and Google, trillion-dollar corporations, are actively fighting this because they think it goes too far. Think about that. The companies that usually don't care that much about privacy are saying, no, this one's a little too dystopian for us. And the dark part is that this is spreading globally. Australia is implementing this in December. The UK has already passed it, and it's already a thing there. And there's serious talk about making this federal in the US. I want to start by outlining the problems, because no one is against keeping children safe. That's not the problem here. But there are actual real problems with these kind of things that aren't at all being properly discussed. The first is that there is a serious privacy concern here. Your government ID is potentially being stored on servers run by companies with zero legal accountability. Problem two is, even if you trust whoever you're giving your ID to, there's no guarantee it's being kept safe. The Discord breach is a great example of this. They were complying with the UK's age verification laws, and because of that, they had to collect IDs, and this was leaked by a third-party vendor, and now all of those are out so anybody can view them. This is a massive data breach with serious problems affecting people's government ID photos, their names, Discord usernames, email addresses, contact details, billing information, and even customer support messages. So this is some serious stuff, all because of keeping people safe. Problem three is that this would completely eliminate any sense of anonymity for sensitive searches. So if you ever need to do anything that requires any layer of privacy or anonymity, this could potentially jeopardize your ability to do that. And the EFF has their reasons why. They say this scheme would lead us further towards an internet where our private data is collected and sold by default. The tens of millions of Americans who do not have government-issued identification may lose access to much of the internet, and anonymous access to the web could cease to exist. And I don't really want to see what that looks like. The fourth issue with these laws is that apps can get blocked from entire states, because now that we are KYCing app stores, and this is now some kind of precedent that states have the ability to control what apps you can get from an app store, which is what Texas has directly proposed. That is not an exaggeration. Texas has passed a law that requires KYCing yourself and handing over some way to verify your age and identity to the app store, in this case Apple and Google, before you can download even something as simple as a weather app. And that's pretty easy to extend to just outright banning an app at a certain point. And I think arguably the most ridiculous problem of all, problem 5, it's not even proven this crap works. Like, that's the craziest thing about this. When they propose these regulations, they're not proposed because there's actual real evidence of this working or examples of which this has been successful. This is from a fairly neutral source about this topic. They try to cover the good and the bad. And the bad is, following the UK's rollout, there was a significant rise in VPN traffic. When Pornhub blocked certain US states after they passed age verification laws, users turned to smaller, unregulated sites that lack safety measures, which undermines the initial goal of even protecting children in the first place. And we've already seen upticks in VPN usage because people just don't want to deal with this stuff, and they're going to access the websites anyway. And so we have all these problems that come along with these potential tiny benefits that aren't even proven to be real. It's crazy. So you can see on screen all the laws that have taken effect in different states, as well as the timelines. And there's a good map here as well, if you guys want to check that out, and you can just hover over it. Of course, all of this is down in the description. The scary thing to me is this neutral source on Ondato has commented on this, and I said this in my surveillance report episode, that dozens of different state requirements means that there's growing pressure for a federal standard in the US that would balance child protection and privacy. Until such a standard exists, courts will have to evaluate these on a case-by-case basis. And I actually think this is way too neutral, because what we've seen is there is zero discussion about the privacy implications of this stuff. These states are rolling out the most hardcore version of this. Again, we see Texas literally KYC the App Store for you to download a weather app. That is as extreme as it gets, and that is Orwellian as these things can possibly get, and there is very little privacy pushback. In fact, it's mostly the big tech companies fighting it. So frankly, I don't know where this idea comes from that there should be a federal standard in the US that would somehow magically now start balancing privacy. I want to remind everyone that the US has never had any real federal privacy regulation that gives any kind of rights to consumers. Only specific states have done so, like California, and that's kind of all we have. So I don't know why this would be the first introduction of privacy regulation for something that's inherently anti-privacy. And I really want to point to the Supreme Court decision earlier this year in 2025 in the US that actually upheld Texas's law requiring adult websites to verify users' ages before allowing access. Not only did the Supreme Court side with Texas, but they actually sided with them in a very fundamental way that would make it so that anyone else can roll this out due to this precedent. The main reason for that is that it actually the implications extend far beyond adult websites, reshaping how courts evaluate the dozens of state laws designed to protect children online that have repeatedly been blocked by federal judges over the past several years. Why they were blocked is because they were considered a massive invasion of freedom of speech. Beforehand, you had strict scrutiny, which meant the government must prove the law serves a compelling interest using the least restrictive means possible, which most laws fails this test, including age verification, most likely. But now it can be deemed under intermediate scrutiny, which means the government only needs to show the law serves an important interest and is substantially related to achieving that goal, which is a much easier standard to meet. And even they say this is a departure from a previous digital rights precedent, because normally digital rights were favored more than something like this. So this is a big loss. And I think it really calls into question how or why, if this was rolled out federally, any layer or sense of privacy would be part of this discussion. They have done everything possible to make it easy to roll this out federally in a way that is harmful to everybody's privacy and comes at the cost of user freedom. And if you want to see just how scary this stuff gets, I think Australia is a really good example of how creepy this crap can be. Australia's e-safety commissioner unveiled a two-part plan to make adult content websites check visitors' age. This means that to pass this check, you need to show a photo ID, use a facial age scan, and enter a credit card check, have parental consent, or tap into a digital identity wallet. Meanwhile, companies will have to keep the data they collect to a minimum and delete it quickly, which, as we all know, I'm sure they'll do a good job of that. Imagine going into your search engine and needing to give up your personal information just to do a basic search on the internet. It's crazy. So that's already issue one of this data apocalypse, which is that you're going to see more data breaches as a result of this. That's not a question of if, it's a question of when. The second issue is that these platforms that are used to age verify people, here's just an example of one persona. They claim they're privacy respecting, but these companies are incentivized directly to collect more data, not less. They have shareholders, they have business models, and they will monetize data if they're able to get away with it. I'm not saying this exact company currently does that, but the fact that that incentive exists is a huge problem that I think most people would be concerned about. And so you might be thinking, well, that's why we have structural protections. And that's actually the final problem I want to talk about. What makes this exponentially worse is that these age verification companies aren't bound by anything like HIPAA, which is like the health privacy regulation, which also kind of sucks in the digital world. It doesn't really do much in a digital world, but that's not even existent here at all. They're not bound by strong data protection laws. If they get hacked, the liability falls on you, not them, especially in the US. The Trump administration is anti-regulation, and sadly, this is probably what we need to help combat some of these companies who can misuse your data. This deregulation applies to the FTC as well, and they've literally, God, I don't care where you stand politically, but they've literally dropped investigations into misleading subscriptions. Like there's services that have misleading subscriptions and make it hard to cancel, and the FTC was trying to get that to be stopped. And the new FTC decided, oh, we're going to drop all investigations into this. Like, I don't care which side of the spectrum you're on politically. That freaking sucks. And that kind of behavior is going to extend into these discussions as well with age verification. It means the FTC is going to be told to stand down, to not investigate, to not penalize, and companies like Discord's age verification vendor can just breach user data and face zero consequences because enforcement is being deliberately deprioritized by the current administration. So not only are we creating this surveillance infrastructure designed to collect extremely sensitive information about people without any kind of privacy regulation in place, we're also seeing on the other end gutting agencies responsible for holding those companies that store that data accountable. So your government ID is now a liability. It's a honeypot for hackers. It's a treasure chest for data brokers. And it's not a question of when, but if that data gets hacked and now your entire digital identity is compromised, and the company will face zero repercussions for something that you are required to do. It is mind-blowing how this is in any way acceptable.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Now, I made a quick list on my notes here of who this hurts, because this actually hurts people. It's being presented as only positive, as this protects children. It keeps children away from bad things. But this actually hurts a lot of people in the process. And I think we can do our best to help protect children and not hurt these people I'm about to list. The first is, ironically, children. There are teen abuse survivors that need help, and they need to look for resources, and they need to show their government ID now and get age gated and lose access to potentially life-saving information from a website that could support them. So age verification doesn't protect that teen. It actually harms them. What about an 18-year-old college student looking for information about STD testing? And if we pivot to adults, we have journalists. We have journalists who are researching human trafficking rings, which involves children. They need to access websites with adult content to understand supply chains. They need to show their ID now, and now there's a permanent record that a journalist accessed 27 adult websites. We also have university researchers that study pornography's effects on the brain. They need access to data and the ability to research anonymously. A lot of research depends on the ability to access this information as if they're not an individual. And that's a double whammy because it also makes age verification itself hard to research. Yeah, it's weird. The third thing is kind of all of us. If you're just a regular adult who doesn't want your ISP, your government, and just random tech companies knowing every website you visit and tying it to a central profile, that's now almost impossible with age verification, which is going to create a permanent record tied to your real identity for everything you do on the internet, and no semblance of real anonymity on the internet anymore. So this impacts everybody. And finally, this hurts the people who need the most help in society. There are millions of Americans that don't have access to government-issued IDs. Those are homeless individuals, low-income Americans who don't have driver's licenses. In fact, I think if you don't have a driver's license because you don't want to drive in this country, you're extremely based for that. Because I don't think we should be as car dependent as we are, and public transit needs to be stronger in this country. And I know some people personally who live by this standard, and they don't have driver's licenses. So now they just can't access websites, and they need to go and get a passport and wait 2 months to access a website. That doesn't make any sense to me. So all of these things have potential to harm kids. It blocks adults from information they need, and it creates permanent records of everybody's internet activity tied to a government ID. That is not safety. That's a surveillance state. And I don't know how else you can possibly try to justify this as not being a surveillance state. Now, I want to make it very clear that it's not allowed to recommend tools like VPNs to bypass these things, but I will just say that VPNs are fantastic privacy tools, and we have an open source VPN chart that is a wonderful place for you to get started on some really good open source VPNs. Specifically, the top 4 are all open source, and I can highly recommend them. Proton specifically is what I'm using, and I do have an affiliate link with them that you can use down in the description. It's opt-in. You'll also see a standard link, but again, any of those top 4 are fantastic. So check that out down in the description if you want a technical solution to have better privacy on the internet. Those tools can maintain privacy while we fight the laws themselves. Now, in terms of how to actually stop this, and this is more of like the direct action that we all should be taking. First, check out the freespeechcoalition.com. I don't actually think they include many actionable resources, but it's a great overall resource to be able to follow what's going on. They have an age verification bill tracker that you all can follow, and they do a really good job breaking things down in a clean way, regardless of who you are. Second, sign up, and if you're able to, donate to the EFF. They do fantastic work when it comes to this, and they're doing a lot of coverage all across the board for this age verification stuff globally. Third, there's also NetChoice, who is also not just publishing and kind of doing coverage for this, but they're also doing some fighting against this as well. So those are a few places to get started. And of course, the thing that nobody wants to hear that I say in every video at this point, you need to contact your representatives. And I don't want to hear from anybody. It doesn't work. We do see that it works, especially when enough people actually cry out and say something about it. I feel like nobody's talking about this problem. So you need to get active, and we need people to hear about this. You can go to house.gov and put in your zip code. You can also look these up manually, and it'll show you all your different districts. And then you can find a person who you're represented by. You can go to their webpage and you can click contact and email me, and you can give all your information. So please contact your local representative. It means a lot when it's coming from you. You can also do this for your senator on senate.gov, and you can also find your senator here, and you can contact your senators there. Don't just send some AI slop. Don't make it a template. Just actually be personal. Share a little bit about yourself. Share why this concerns you specifically and the people around you, and tell them, I want you to vote no on whatever bill number is relevant to you. So tie this back to whatever these bills are in a specific state, and or just say that I am against these bills that have happened in other states. The more that you speak about this, the better, and the more that that they're aware people are opposed to these kinds of things. And you don't have to be in the US to be a part of this fight. This stuff is happening globally, so find your representatives in other locations too, even if you're outside the US. And this is exactly the type of story that we cover here at Techlore. The surveillance threats happening right now that nobody's paying attention to. And if you like these deep dives on age verification, chat control, digital IDs, all of it, you can become a Techlorian. You can join our exclusive communities, get access to fun perks that we have for all of you. You can do it through YouTube memberships, or you can do it via our portal down in the description. So go ahead and check those out to support our work. And of course, all sources for everything are down in the description. Find a way to fight, and I'll see you next time on Techlore.